Hi, I'm from Samson Obole. Welcome to today's lecture on our continuing series on Telegram. So we'll be looking at the Potter's Five, and we talked about the fact that in every business to have success, structure is one of the most important things that is needed for your business to survive. And we took our first lecture looking at around what we call the threats of new entrants and we took it from two perspectives. We took it first from the perspective of you as an existing business. What is the threat that is posed by people coming into the industry new? Then we also looked at it from the second perspective, which is you trying to come into a new space. What are the things you look out for? We shared a couple of characteristics or features or highlights that you need to look out for to understand how to mitigate against them. Now, the number two is the bargaining power of the suppliers. Now, you know that as a business, there are inputs or there are partners or collaborators that you depend on that allows you to perform your function, that allows you to focus on your core product, either to provide a product or a service. So there are things that needs to be in place that you depend on, that in turn affects your ability to do what you need to do, that you now give that output to your market as a source of income, profit, or whatever it is, revenue generation, and so forth. Now, the bargaining power of suppliers, again, we are going to look at the features like we did in our first class on the threat of new entrants. So the number one is the number of suppliers available. The number of suppliers available. So looking at your business right now, is it that your business is totally dependent on one source and one person for all your inputs, such that if that person fails, your business is stagnant? You enter a point of stagnation. Are you at the point where there are just a few people who you depend on for the running or success of your business, or do you have a contingency supplier? I don't know if that makes sense. So you want to know, how many suppliers am I dealing with? Number two, not just about the numerical value of the number of suppliers you have in a particular space, either for fertilizer, for insecticide, pesticide, seeds, and so on and so forth. But again, even within that space, how many of them are you dependent on? So what I mean by that is you need to buy NPK. Are you only dependent on one person for NPK, though you have 30 different suppliers, but these 30 different people supply 30 different things? Or do you have 4, 5, 6 people that you can buy your NPK from? Because this plays a huge role. If you are in a space where your supplier knows that without them you cannot go on to the next level or the next phase of your business, it simply means that they hold the power, then you are subservient to them. Your business is at their mercy, your business is at their whim. Number two is the size of the suppliers. Size of the suppliers, the size. Now, when we say size this time around, is how large a conglomerate are your suppliers. So, for example, if as a company I am buying my fertilizers from Dangote Fertilizer, now automatically Dangote Fertilizer is way bigger than I am. So it means that I depend on them more than they depend on me. I am depending on them more than they are depending on me. And what that simply means is I am always at their mercy. Yes, they need me to buy to sell, but most importantly, I need them to supply to remain in business. Because there are so many small people like us who need them more than they need us. And that is not a good balance of power. Yes, I understand the advantage of having a supplier that is of large size, because you know you can depend on them to always have it available when you need it. But much more than that, it means that they hold the power in negotiation. They hold the power in your profitability as a business. I don't know if that makes sense. Number three is supplier concentration. Suppliers concentration. So Where you are, do you have so many suppliers in that place? Is there a space where they are most concentrated that you are able to get things at a bargain? Or are you at the point where the suppliers that you have there are few, and because they are few, you have to wait on their own time before you can make decisions for your own business? For example, we use PVC pipes. In the use of PVC pipes, the place we have supplier concentration is in Ibadan. So anytime we have to plan project in the southwest outside Ibadan, we have to plan it in respect to these guys. To, okay, this is what you need, this is what we need, this is when we need it, this is how it has to go. Because in the other areas, by the time we are doing a large scale farming in another area, it is cheaper to still buy from Ibadan, add transportation, than to buy most of the time even in Lagos. So is it a case where you have suppliers concentration? Because that can affect your business. Again, most of the time where there is a large level of supplier concentration, there is also a large level of unionism. There is usually a large level of unionism where they can come together and make a decision that they now expect others to agree. A good example, I remember there is a place in Benin that one of my senior colleagues was discussing about, where they sell fishes. And there is a large supplier concentration in that place of people that sell fishes. So it means that when whomever wants to buy fish comes to buy fish, they are able to take advantage of the large supplier concentration. I don't know if that makes sense. So yet as a business, you can also try to position yourself. So it's not every time you want to put yourself in seclusion that, oh, I don't want to stay where other people doing what I am doing are. At times, being where others are gives you the power to negotiate better prices for your commodity. Again, you should be able to use these things to your advantage. Number 4 is availability of substitutes from your supplier. Availability of substitutes for your supplier, for your supplier's product. So take for instance, we just planted tomatoes on the farm, beef stick tomatoes. Now for us to plant the beef stick tomatoes, we had various people that gave us different prices of seeds based on the characteristics we were looking for. But what all the suppliers understood was, we have substitutes for them. So the characteristics are already known that favors what I want. So whose price is the cheapest? Who gives me the best offer beyond price? Are you going to deliver for free? If I have if I plant and I do not get the number of seeds that were supposed to be in the pack, are you going to replace? What if the seedlings have issues, not from my own fault, but from an issue with the seed? Would you replace? I don't know if that makes any sense. So are there availability of substitutes? Because if you are coming in, again, from the perspective of somebody coming in, if you want to come in, you need to ask yourself, are there substitutes for the suppliers that exist? Or is it that the suppliers are the, in quote, invisible hands behind the scene that determines who makes profit and who gets out of business? So are there substitutes? Or is it that you are saying, I can only use calcium, if it is not calcium, it is nothing else, and your calcium must come from this particular company, and without them this thing does not work? Because where there is no substitute, then the power belongs to your supplier. So look at, especially for those of us that are in the like the middlemen kind of things, what I prefer is called aggregators. Do you have substitute? Or is it that if Lagbaja does not provide the tomatoes, you have nothing to sell? So if you do not have substitute, it means that you are in business at the mercy of the person that you have to depend on solely. So that is that. The number next is the uniqueness of supplier's product or service. What is unique? What differentiates them? What sets them apart in the market? Because all of these will help you to build a proper structure. So let's take, for example, let me use a wide example, Apple and Samsung. I know for a fact that some of the one or two of the chips inside Apple is produced by Samsung. Now I want to believe that Apple has money enough to look for other guys that can create chips, but the reason they may have decided to stick with Samsung all these years despite becoming competitors is there is a uniqueness in what they are producing that gives Apple an edge in the marketplace. So, looking at your suppliers, is there something unique about their inputs that gives you an advantage in the market space or marketplace? If not, then there should be no reason to have total loyalty to them. I don't know if that makes any sense. If their input is not unique, is not differentiable, then you should not be loyal to just their product. Take for instance, we are to get some compost, so we are trying to get some compost, and one of the organizations we want to get compost from, we also want to get land from them for a project we want to run. And the company said, oh, we are willing to give you land if you would agree that we tie compost to land, meaning whatever project you run on this land, you agree you buy compost from us. And the first thing I told them is, no, it can't happen, because there is nothing unique about the compost. The uniqueness of the land is that it is close to where I want to be, where I can have an oversight easily. But there is nothing unique about your compost. So if I am buying your compost, I am buying your compost on the premise that it is as good as my alternatives, if not better, and it is cheaper. Because if it is exactly the same thing like my alternative and it is the same price, I have no reason to switch from where I already buy to you. I don't know if that makes any sense. So alternative, or sorry, uniqueness or differentiation of the supplier. Is there something that makes the supplier unique? If not, there is no need for your loyalty to that supplier. Except now, uniqueness may not just be about product, it could be uniqueness around this guy delivers when he says he will deliver. They are on time whenever they say they will be there. So what is the uniqueness? Because your supplier's uniqueness should give you an edge in the market space. I hope that makes sense. Next is switching costs. The switching cost. So another bargaining power of supplier is, if you look at, so okay, I think I didn't explain this from the supplier's perspective. If the supplier knows that there is something unique about them that gives your business an edge, that gives them a power over you, because they know that we are unique. The same thing, I don't think I discussed this that way. For availability of substitute, if the supplier knows that there is no substitute for what we are providing, it gives them power. So as the owner of the business, your own job is to find a way to ensure there are substitutes to collect the power back. Hope that makes sense. Next is switching cost. So switching cost is, I have been buying product from Mr. A, but I am no longer comfortable with buying with A. I want to switch to B as my supplier. Now, there is a cost in switching from A to B. If the suppliers understand that there is a higher cost from switching from A to B, then they have the power, because they know that they can simply keep you at A and save you that cost of switching. Let me give you an example. So let's say I want to buy seats. Let's say I have always bought my seats from, let's say, East West. Sorry, we have some Chinese people that came to buy produce. East West seat, that is where I've always bought all my seats. But now, again, I'm using real company names. I am thinking of switching to Syngenta. Option 1. I am thinking of switching to our own lab, SFL. Option 2. Then I am thinking of, I'm looking for other people, let's say even my guys in the industry, BIC. These are options. Now, East West Seed will look at the fact that, oh, if he needs to switch to Syngenta, we can supply seeds to him directly. He needs to go to Lagos to pick up from Syngenta. So there is a switching cost here of transport. Now, if the value I am going to be getting is the same, the supplier, which is from East West Seed, understands I have no reason to fear, because this is an additional cost that this business will not want to pick, because picking up this cost would affect their bottom line, their profitability. Next is we producing our own seed. Now we are setting up our tissue culture lab. They look at it that this may take another 3 to 5 years for it to be fully active. When it is fully active, this is cheapest on the long run. But for now, they know they have time. They have enough time. So they will want to ensure that they maximize this time. Now, BIC on their own, they are not a seed company that produces the seed, but rather a selling platform. And they are with me in Abeokuta. And they know that by going to BIC, I can get more options. They have only one option, their own seed. Here I can get more options, their seeds, Syngenta, this and that. So they understand that with this option, this is a threat to them. I don't know if I'm making any sense. So with option B, they do not see it as threat, they have the bargaining power. With option C, there is still the issue of time, they have the bargaining power. With option BIC, now they are seeing that they have issues to deal with. So the switching cost. So what will make me not to switch from A to any of these is my switching cost, the cost I have to bear for moving. Now this cost, like you notice here, was more transport, which is in money. This was on time. It could be in resources, it could be psychological, it could be mental. Whatever cost I would need to bear from switching from one supplier to another, if it favors me remaining with the original supplier, then that is the power that that supplier wields. That is the power that that supplier holds as an advantage to ensure that I do not move. I hope that makes sense. Next is supplier threat for forward integration. So there is forward integration. So what does this mean? So let's take for example, let me use one of my French company, Seedfort. Now Seedfort started by selling seeds, but over time they moved forward into actual farming. Now what this simply means for whomever is depending on them on seed is some of the seeds they now have will go into their farming. And for a farmer, this is an issue, because when the man that you buy seed from is now also farming, there are stories you cannot tell because they know. Two, they are going to favor themselves first to get the best of the seed before they sell to you. So this is a threat. So as looking at your suppliers right now, how many of them do you think have that tendency to forward integrate into what you're doing? We are calling it forward integration because remember that the supplier is at the input level, you are the middleman, and you produce output that goes to the market. So if this input man, who is the supplier, is now pushing his business to get to what you are doing, it means that this is a new entrance into your own line of business, and this would reduce your profitability and hold on the market, because you will still be depending on them to get what you want done, meanwhile they are not dependent on you to do what you are doing. I hope that makes sense. Then there is the industry threat of backward integration. Industry threat of backward integration. So initially there was just, let's say, 2 suppliers supplying everything that you need. There were 2 suppliers and you were the middleman. And sorry, not the middleman, the person doing the job. And you were like 3 initially. You were like 3 or 4 of you in this region. Now, if one of these people decides to backward integrate, you realize that these men may be forced to increase their cost of supply so that they can still be profitable, because now they are more. And when that happens, those of you that did not backward integrate now becomes the guys that bear the brunt of the whole process. If that makes sense. So their backward integration has become what's the word now? is a cost that every other person in the value chain would have to bear. So there is the forward integration thread, there is the backward integration thread. Next is suppliers' contribution to your quality or service of industry products. So suppliers' contribution to your quality. So looking at your product, people say, this your product is awesome, this is the best quality, this is the best service, blah blah blah, and all of that, which is awesome feedback. But now, how much of your supplier's input is responsible for your quality of product or service? Because the higher their level, the higher their input contributes to your quality, the more the power they exact on you and your company. I say that again. The more they contribute to your quality, the more the power they exact on you and your company. So you need to understand it. Next is importance of volume to supplier. So volume to supplier, importance of volume to supplier. So what this essentially means is, how much volume are you taking from this supplier, and how important is your volume ratio to that supplier? So for example, we have a scheme we are starting up soon where we are going to have about 100 farmers working with us. They are our input suppliers. They are the ones giving us the produce that we will sell to our market. We are empowering them with funds and everything they need, but we need their volumes to come back to us. Now, essentially, for each of the 100 farmers, the volumes they are producing is not much compared to what we are off-taking, because we are picking up everything. So as the person taking from them, in this case as the input supplier to us as a business, what they are bringing is not so much, which means, in quotes, we are not super committed, in quotes. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to explain. There is a level I would go for them not to fail. But on the flip side, we have another company who we are working with, or 2 or 3 more companies who we are working with, that we are helping them do production on a mega scale, where we are getting 50, 100 tons of tomatoes in the space of 3-4 months. Now, for those ones, the volume that they are going to give us as input is much, so there is a level of power they have over us, because what we have invested in them is much, so their failure would affect our activities. I don't know if that makes any sense. So what volume are you collecting? Is the volume enough for you to hold power over your suppliers? If not, you need to know and find a way to build a structure to protect you. Because if your volume, if you stop patronizing and your volume does not hurt your suppliers, then your suppliers have the power in that relationship. But if the volume will hurt the suppliers, then you have the power in that relationship, in that dynamics. So how do you ensure that even if you are not having the right volume that can hurt them, that there is a mutual reciprocated respect for the little you are still collecting? The next is total industry cost contributed by supplier. So if you look at your industry, so let's take for example, we say total industry cost contributed by suppliers. So I want to look for an example. Dangote, once his Dangote fertilizers, once his fertilizers hit the market, you realize that as an input supply of fertilizer, he is going to be contributing a major percentage of the input suppliers for the farmers. Interpretation: that industry is largely dependent on that supplier. So that supplier has the power in that industry when it comes to policy making, price setting, price floor, price ceiling, and all of that on the negotiation table. Unlike somebody whose contribution to the industry is what else? Whether you produce or not, we really do not care. We don't know. So you need to know, these suppliers that I am dealing with, what is their power in this industry, in this sector, in this microeconomic environment that we exist in. So they may not be national or global, but in your local government, they may be one big superpower. So you need to know, so that you have a structure in place to know all the pros and cons, weigh them properly and right, have an agreement that protects you in that kind of relationship. Then the next is importance of the industry to the supplier's profit. So there is first, so this is industry now to supplier's profit. So when you look at the whole industry, how important is that industry to the supplier's profitability? So for example, Dangote making fertilizer, if the farmer associations come together and say, no, this man's fertilizer is killing people, is not good, and blah blah blah. Now, because he is the major supplier, it also means that if the farmers revoke, his industry will be and would run into, his company will run into issues. Why? If the industry plays a huge role in the profitability of that business of the supplier, then the industry having a union or a body can mar or make that supplier's own business. I don't know if that makes any sense. So same way, even as a small company, if there is a particular industry who you go and buy all your inputs from, 10 million, 20 million naira input, and whenever you come like this, it's Merry Christmas for them, because they know that with your profit they can run for another 1 year without needing another person. So it means that you and your group of friends as an industry has a major role to play in the survival or death of that supplier in that sector. So it gives you the power. So what I would want us to do after we've watched this is, looking at this, see what structure you can build that makes you formidable to the supplier, so that the supplier needs you more than you need them. They may be bigger, but look at all of these characteristics. If we have 1 or 2 persons that give scenarios of what their company looks like, then I can probably use their own scenario to paint a structure for them. I hope that makes sense. So thank you. Till next class, we'll look at bargaining power of buyers.